Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We apologize for 5 minutes late to start. I'd like to have a call to our regular meeting, Monday, July 23rd, 2018, regular council meeting. Mr. Krause, may begin with the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Prior to the commencement of this public meeting, council had an executive session to discuss personnel matters and real estate issues. To begin with the roll call, please.
Mr. Amendola,
Here.
Mr. Kraus,
Here.
Ms. Perry,
Here.
Ms. Glosser, Ms. Stamets,
Here.
Mr. Rosario,
Here.
Mr. Lavasser,
Here.
Mayor Bloom,
Here.
Solicitor Minsterman.
Here.
I'm sorry.
No.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Solicitor Corbel.
Please ask me about school.
Solicitor Corbel.
I'm here.
Engineer Minsterman.
Here.
And our manager Kazarowski.
Here.
Thank you. Moving forward with the approval of the bill list dated July 23rd, 2018.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion pertaining to those bills? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All that opposed? We have the approval of the bill list. Moving forward with the approval of the minutes dated July 9th, 2018.
So moved.
Thank you. Any discussion regarding those minutes? We have the approval of the, hold on. Did we get a vote? Sorry. All that approve?
Aye.
All right, all that opposed? Sorry, getting ahead of myself. So approval of the minutes, moving forward to citizen comments. And let's see what we have here. Actually, in the engineer's report, there's topics concerning the sewer, so I'm gonna let the sewer, comments on the sewers that come forth. Beginning with owners of 92 Starrett Street.
My name is Greg Weaver. I'm at 92 Starrett Street. Here to follow up from 2 sessions ago. Last session we were out of town, so we weren't able to attend. I wanted to follow up regarding the meeting last week. I did watch it, the recording. A couple points during that meeting. Phil, at 1 hour, 4 minutes, 13 seconds, you admitted that the system didn't have enough capacity to handle the June 20th rain. On 1 hour, 8 minutes, and 38-second mark, you had also mentioned something regarding Borough spending in abundance with the engineer, and some of that came from the sewage fund, which is concerning. So I'm just here again to reiterate our issues. We had 30 inches of sewage water June 20th. The more I'm hearing, Mike Crown stated that he was aware when he was on council roughly 10 years ago that there were sewage issues on Borough and Starrett Street. Really, with everything I'm seeing more neglect of the sewage system over the years. It hasn't been addressed, hasn't been updated, and we were impacted severely on June 20th. We lost every appliance, like I said 2 meetings ago: furnace, air conditioner, hot water tank, washer, dryer, not to mention countless other things that were down there. Today, we're here, we want to know what's going to happen, what fix is in place, what is going to be addressed with our issues. We haven't even touched hurricane season yet. This, I feel, isn't once decade storms, act of gods. I mean, there were multiple storms after June 20th and other areas flooded. So this is becoming more of a common storm recurrence. It's not every once in a while that this is gonna happen. I was with the sewage company when they were the Allstate, I believe, when they were inspecting lines. I watched them the entire way down, talking with them. There's no issues, there's no blockages. It is strictly inability for this, the sewage and the stormwater to be taken out of our area. So you came to our house multiple times now. We've talked regarding the unacceptability of the amount of sewage that was in my basement. You said that it was unacceptable. You said that somehow there should be responsibilities on the borough, that this is happening to us, it happened to multiple of our neighbors. It's not anything that I can do. We have sump pumps with French drain to alleviate any stormwater coming through the foundation. As a homeowner, there's nothing else I can do. This is a borough problem. This is not a homeowner problem. I can't fix anything else. Phil, you mentioned after a couple emails that you kind of danced around my questions and you came down and talked to James and myself about a backflow valve that you would look at getting the borough to put in for us. I'm going to also follow up on that and see where that is. Honestly, I find it kind of appalling. You came down, we're in disaster recovery, and I feel like you used us to pitch a personal agenda for the Clearview project. We were here supporting, we were here to talk about sewage, and then it is spoken to the engineer. It wasn't you, us, 2 meetings ago, it was another fella, and he blatantly said that the Clearview project isn't going to help us. I want to know what is going to help us. 30 inches of sewage water is unacceptable. At this point, I don't know what else we can do. I want to know what's going to happen. I want to fix. Something needs to happen. I can't do anything else as a homeowner. It's the borough's problem at this point to fix the sewage, to do something to help us out. Phil, during that July 9th meeting that we were unable to attend, you admitted again that the system was just overwhelmed during that storm system. At this point, I want to know where I can send my $20,000 worth of loss, a bill to the borough for storage of the sewage system that was in my basement while the borough system wasn't able to take it. That's all I have to say at this point. Thank you.
Next on the list, owner of 96 Sterrett Street.
Yes, 96 Sterrett Street, pardon me, James Mengen. I could easily sign my name to the bottom of Greg's letter as easily as he wrote it. So my question is very simple. When does the board start working for us, the constituents? And then when do we get some guarantee from the engineer that the Clearview project is going to directly benefit the people on Sterrett Street, when the engineer last time said that project is not going to directly benefit us because we sit higher? So really, it comes down to you guys. Do we get backflow valves? Do we get something to protect ourselves and our houses within your jurisdiction? And then can I get some answer from you that says a Clearview project is going to directly benefit us, the Dukers, and the rest of the people on Sterrett Street? It's that simple. So that's my question to you. I would love at some point in time this evening to hear some answer, okay?
Thank you, sir. All right. Moving to everybody else that's on the list. I believe all of these other issues are issues that we'll have to wait till the end of the meeting. The descriptions are parking along Crafton Ave and an issue on Broadhead Ave. So with that, I'm going to move forward with the meeting. Moving forward with the acknowledgement of the receipt of written reports, June 2018. We have the treasurer's report, the financial report, the Act 511, the trash collection, the property tax collection, police report, EMS report, ordinance officers report, building inspection report, public works report, fire department, and library reports. So, does anybody have any questions about the reports? Can I?
So moved.
Okay. Second? All right. So any discussion? All right, no questions on those reports. May I have approval of those reports, please?
Aye.
All right, all in favor, all opposed? All right, moving forward, the mayor's report.
Just have one item that I'd like to present to the borough office. It was just brought up to me about Crafton Boulevard between, we'll use Stevens Street and South Grandview Avenue, the 15-mile-an-hour posted speed limit and the road humps. And I'm just wondering if the borough office can provide me with a copy of the traffic study that was conducted before that ordinance was enacted. It's quite a long time ago. So I know there's a portion in the vehicle code that covers 15 mile an hour around parks and schools. But that 15 mile an hour goes from, like I said, Steuben all the way to Grandview. So if we could get a copy of that traffic study that was conducted, of course, I don't know how many years ago.
Yeah, we'll have to research and see if there's more out there.
Right, okay, and
Before
then,
96,
pardon?
before 96. It was
Before 96, 06, 16, so you're talking
93,
at least
94.
22 years ago, okay? So if we could do that, then maybe come around and address that at a later time. That's all I have.
It would have been between 94 and 96. I moved here in June of 94, and it was still the other way. And then within 12 months or so was when it changed.
It's changed.
Yep.
All right. Moving on to the engineer's report. I believe, Mr. Minsterman, you can speak to the comments that were brought up during the first section of citizen comments. I need to be crystal clear on these issues. As you can see, there's been a lot of concern over the past month and a half on these subjects.
Yes, so I'll go over my report, and then after that, if I didn't elaborate or expand on the item specifically, we can go back to it. But this way I'll try to cover everything in addition to those topics. We have submitted a report dated July 19th with a summary of the projects that we're working on, but I'll just take a minute to go through some of the ones that have changed since that report or just needed a bit of highlighting as a result of certain issues. So essentially, the road program is the first item to discuss or update. A site walk was held on July 11th to review the scope of work with the interim borough manager and the contractor. Material submittals, which are required before the execution of the contract by the contractor, are in process. And the work did begin on July 16th and is ongoing now. The Crafton Park Rain Garden. A meeting was held on site July 17th with members of the Shade Tree Commission, the landscape subcontractor, Gateway, basically to review the outstanding problems with the rain garden. So from that meeting, we decided that this looks like a contractor issue. And so we're going to be putting together a punch list for the contractor to address specific issues. And what those are is replace the dead plantings, repair the pond sidewall, remove sediment from the sidewall erosion that is accumulated at the base of the pond. We're also going to look to working with Public Works on mobilizing to the site to maintain the rain garden, to remove some of the weeds that are choking out the plants. But in general, the plants are in good shape. Shade Tree Commission seemed to think that that they were growing and thriving. There was a small percentage that needs replaced, and so we're going to make those demands on the contractor to get the pond into the shape that it was when it was finished. One of the issues was the contractor planted very late in the fall last year, against our recommendation. But they decided that, and the agreement was, if any of the plants died, that they would replace them. So we're holding them to that. We'll be putting a letter together to address the items that I have mentioned, and we'll see to it that that those issues are resolved and that the condition of the rain garden is satisfactory to Crafton Borough. Also, Gateway proposed and applied for, on Crafton's behalf, a PennDOT grant to replace several aging signals in the borough. As you know, Crafton was awarded our recommended amount of $700,000 with a 20% Crafton match of $176,000. The borough can expect a notice of award letter from the PennDOT with draft agreements. After you get those agreements, you're going to have to decide which, if any, and all of the intersections you want to proceed with. So our intent is to meet with the interim manager, go over all those, refresh the thoughts that are behind that, talk about the age of the signals, what it would cost if you pass on the grant, and you may have to do this in the future on your own, and therefore you can be informed to make that decision to accept those grants, all or in part, at your desire. Next, just under general engineering, we did submit a letter back on June 1st requesting from the contractor who did the demolition work along, I think it was Sycamore, there was another street, and we asked them to come out and fix the deficient planting. There was a lack of topsoil and a restoration on those two demolitions, and we've since checked back. We're not getting any response, nothing from the contractor. It appears he's ignoring our requirements to fulfill his obligations. So we'd like to work with the solicitor to enforce the contract and try to compel the contractor, similar to the pond or pool project, to live up to those obligations. We still are under the 2-year maintenance bond of that person's work. Also, the County Act 167 plan was approved a month or two ago. It obligates the municipalities to bring their stormwater ordinances up to the minimum standards of the required ordinance content in the ordinance by the end of the year. So essentially, the county has set a series of standards that are usually more strict than most municipalities are utilizing. So when there's development and redevelopment, some municipalities are strict on developers and some are not. This requirement makes everyone on an even playing field. You can make your requirements more strict for stormwater control if you choose. So we just recommend that your ordinance be reviewed and compared to the minimum standards of the Act 167 ordinance to make sure that you do meet that requirement. We have to the end of the year, as I mentioned. Also, the County Conservation District is offering a $2,000 grant to evaluate your ordinance, to advertise, draft the changes, and issue the new ordinance. So just want to make that clear. Okay, so talk about some flooding issues and storm and combined system issues. We did finish the evaluations specifically on Sterrett, since that's the topic tonight from the residents here. We did find, as the resident mentioned, that there really were no obstructions, that the system was not blocked, the system was not hampered, at least at the time we did the televising. That's not to say that something could have been obstructed during the storm and caused a backup, and then it relieved itself, flushed it out, and we didn't see it. But in this situation, as a result, it would be different if Upper St. Clair and Bethel Park and a lot of the South Hills municipalities didn't have such a tremendous flooding situation as a result of that extremely intense rain event. So we prepared letters as a result of our assessment to address what we thought happened and what are the issues there. So I'll just pull the letter up and just highlight on some of the things that we talked about. So, so as a result of not seeing anything in the system, not really having chronic complaints from the areas, you know, this appears to be a one-time circumstance where this occurred on Sterrett, at least these homes. And one-time meaning that it doesn't happen on large events, it doesn't happen on regular events. It's just not a chronic problem. It's just because there are not complaints. That's how we judge whether something is chronic or not. And how many times someone tells us an occurrence happens like that. So we didn't see anything in the pipes. The condition of the pipes, it is performing as it was designed. That's the ultimate conclusion, that the system is performing as it was designed. What that means, though, is that the system is designed for some specific maximum event. And some might say it's a 25-year, a 50-year, whatever that storm event is, and there's a definition of what that means. It's not just that, that the storm could occur every 25 years. That's sort of what people summarize, but it's more complex than that. But the point is that no matter what system you design, no matter what design storm you follow the standards for, there'll be a bigger storm, and the system can't handle it. And so what the obligations are, at least in my understanding of the municipality, is to use generally accepted engineering practices and design standards to design and operate and maintain a system that is acceptable in the engineering field, and it meets minimum standards as far as providing service to the residents. And this system meets that. What a system that wouldn't meet that, we could see that through multiple complaints and multiple exceedances or capacity problems through flooding. So with that, and as well as the many hundreds of residents in the South Hills that had sustained that damage due to what is known as an act of God, very unique, not common to our area. There just doesn't appear to be anything that the municipality can and must do to change the system. The only thing to do would be to simply put a system in twice as large as it is now, and that might take care of a storm that's twice as large, but then there'll be one larger than that someday. So municipalities look at the cost benefit, meeting the design standards, operating and maintaining their systems so that they carry and they abide by the capacities that they're designed for. Unfortunately, the weather doesn't respect that. And so there are going to be occurrences where systems fail, and they fail not because in terms of a breakdown, they fail because they exceed their design capacity. So it's hard to hear that. I was a victim of flooding myself, and it is very traumatic, and it is a very problematic situation. It's just unfortunate that the municipality at this point can't do anything directly to stop that problem. The way that it gets stopped is that storm event won't come back, right? Or it might be 100 or 200 years from now. So I can only say that if the council would say, hey, look, we want Stair Street or whatever street to meet a specific design capacity, we could check that capacity and we could design it to upsize a sewer, we could tell you what it would cost to do, and you can make that decision. The problem is if you do it in one place, you'll have to do it in another and another. So the idea is, normally with municipal systems, is to make sure you identify your weak points. Where are your weakest points? Where are your systems failing? Where are they collapsing? Where are they accumulating debris? Where's the capacity problems that are causing problems within the system, and attack those. So you continually attack the bottlenecks, the weak points, but it's not normally feasible to attack individual flood situations. So even from a backwater valve perspective, normally why municipalities would install those is because they have a problem with their system. So as a result of their problem, and capacity is not normally identified as a problem of the system, if there's a problem with capacity, let's say the pipe is collapsing, it's oblong, it can't take, it's not living up to the capacity that it's designed for, then municipalities will sometimes opt to install backwater valves to keep the sewage from coming into the lateral. Now, once again, that's not normally done unless there is what I call a chronic problem. Once again, I don't see this as a chronic problem. It certainly was a tragedy. It certainly was a traumatic event. I don't want to discount that. But it doesn't seem to be a chronic problem. So we didn't recommend to do anything with the systems. We didn't recommend to install backwater valves because there are standards of when you would do that, and you want to try to abide by those standards. So certainly council could say, yep, let's put them in, and we can assist in that effort. Residents can do things to help themselves as well. They can install backwater valves. They're not as expensive as you would imagine. I think you can buy one for $150. Now, you want a professional to install it because, to be honest with you, there's many times backwater valves cause more damage than they do good. If you put a backwater valve in the wrong spot and the valve closes and your roof drains come down and the roof drains can't get out because the backwater valve is closed, they'll back up into your system. So there's more to just sticking a backwater valve in, but the issue is that there are ways that residents can help protect themselves, and there are standards that the municipalities live by, and I'm only stating, from a common practice standpoint. I'm not saying you shouldn't do anything. I'm only saying that standards are that it meets the capacity, the design capacity of that pipe. So I'm sorry I'm sure that's not what you wanted to hear. I can just tell you what.
Clearview project is what I asked you. So the
Pardon?
Clearview project, does that alleviate our water? That's why I asked you directly, so can you speak to that?
Yes, sure.
You've answered their question, which is, they're not gonna do anything now. So can Clearview
Not
project do something for
necessarily.
us?
Yes.
Can
So-
you speak
so-
about the system and how the system works and about the storage that's going to be built for the stormwater separation?
One of the things that causes backups, as I mentioned, is capacity, right? So if the water can't get out of the pipe, then it backs up and the water can't get in, so it floods, right? Or it puts pressure to push the water up into the laterals, into the homes, right? So that's why systems fail. That's why there's too much water going in and it can't get out. So you can either work on the water getting in problem or the water getting out, right? So you limit the water getting in by, let's say, separating the sewer system. Have your stormwater system in one pipe and your sanitary sewer in another pipe, right? So you're splitting the flow, so you're not letting as much water come in those pipes, and therefore it can take more, because you have 2 pipes instead of 1. The getting outside is alleviate, get the water out faster, make more room in the pipe downstream from upstream areas. That's what Clearview can do. So we haven't assessed, is it a 1/4 of an inch of the pipe diameter? Is it an inch of pipe? We don't know if it's 10,000 gallons or 1,000,000 gallons, right? We only know that anytime you detain flow, stormwater flow, which means hold it back into a tank, you're allowing more room in the downstream pipes. So the fact that Sterrett is upstream of this project means that it will have some effect. So it's a complex study and an expensive one to do flow monitoring to see what that impact is. I can only say that it absolutely has an impact. It will take some volume of water out so that your water can flow downstream more efficiently. So that's all I can say about it. Anything downstream from where you flow has some impact. The further you go downstream, obviously, the lessening of the impact. So, but storm sewer work is different than, let's say, street paving. So if you pave a street 4 blocks away, the people on the street get the benefit. If you upsize a sewer, you take a bottleneck 4 blocks away, everybody upstream from that sewer line fix benefits. So I hope that makes some sense.
I have a question. This backflow,
Backwater valve?
yeah, backwater valve, I mean, like, what would it cost the borough to put those in up there at some of those properties?
If it wasn't a difficult application, probably less than $1,000 per home.
Have we considered doing that?
It's really upon the recommendation of the engineer at this point.
My recommendation is that it's not warranted from a chronic problem, but it doesn't mean that the council could say, hey, we just want to do it anyway. That's all.
So I have 2 questions on that. I'm hearing you say chronic. I remember a woman who came here and said she's lived here for 50 years, and it's been happening time and time again to her. So we have some newer residents who haven't been here that long. So I'm having a little trouble hearing and accepting that there isn't a chronic problem up there. And then my other question is, even if we decide to do this, will it be less than a Band-Aid, the backwater valves? Will it be effective? And then my third question has to do with, you talk about it performing as designed. And my question is, while it was designed for what and when, how many years ago, and is that design adequate for today? I mean, even if we just don't even consider all the wet weather, you consider how homes are used, and, I mean, I imagine you might even have, not here in front of you, but studies of how much water, how much sewage in a typical house just in the last 20 or 30 years. And so the question really is not whether this is performing as designed, but whether this design is adequate for today.
So we could do the engineering analysis for that. Yes, we could give you a proposal, and we could do the engineering study to tell you what the system is designed for today, what storm event doesn't carry. So yes, we could do that.
We don't have those records? We don't know
Those
that?
aren't, no, those design records from, whenever these sewers were built don't really exist.
So then, is that what we need to be doing? Or should we put that to the side and say, what should we have designed there for today, including wet weather, looking at whether we are going to do more separation, and looking at how much does a typical home actually put out today. I mean, I don't think we need to know what was it designed for. What we need to do, if we're going to do proper troubleshooting, which troubleshooting is a big part of my job, you look for what's the right answer today, and then look to see, do I have that? I mean, that seems what makes sense to me.
The issue is, it's a balancing act in the pipe. So really what affects the capacity of the sewer is rain. So what the house has put out really have minimal to no impact on the performance of the system. It's just that small of a percentage. So the idea is, when it rains, what's the area that it's draining? What development has there been accomplished? How many paved streets, how many paved parking lots, how many new roofs have been added? And all that water doesn't get absorbed into the ground. It goes right to the storm system. So when you talk about something designed and built 50 or 100 years ago, it was a very different landscape than it is today. So certainly an engineering analysis on Starrett, on your entire system, could tell you where you stand. What design storms in today's standard are actually, like, what is the flow getting to those pipes? And what does that quantify as related to a design storm? So that work could be done. I would suspect, though, that it will be very similar throughout your entire system. If we thought, if everything would probably perform very similarly, maybe whatever that design storm would be, because everything was built around the same time, and then the development came in around the same time in the same process, and it probably would end up that a lot of the sewers would be similar. And they're obviously taking much more flow than they have in the past. So if that is part of a bigger understanding of the system, right? Looking at individual streets that flood is not an efficient way to do it. It's an all-encompassing, big picture project that would identify what's happening in the community as a whole. And we do studies like that. We're doing an extensively large modeling project in Whitehall for that same reason. There are so many places that are getting chronic complaints of flooding that they've commissioned an actual model of their entire system, both storm and sanitary, to see what happens. So we'll be able to tell them, what if it rains a half an inch in 15 minutes? What if it rains 2 inches in 30 minutes? We can simulate all the different rain events and all the different activities associated once the model's built. And it will tell us, where are the overflows and issues like that.
So Gateway has been our engineer for how many years?
60.
So why does Gateway not have institutional knowledge that could be brought to the table at this point? If you've been working for us for 60 years, if I had been working for my clients for 60 years and I didn't have those answers, right now, I'd be out.
Yeah, that's a tough way to look at it, because in actuality, if the councils before you don't want those answers, don't ask for those answers, don't have the money for those answers, how can they be given? It's not something that we have a gut instinct on. It's not something that can be done by walking the streets. It's an engineering analysis. It takes flow monitoring. It takes measurements of the systems. It takes design calculations and engineering analysis. It's comprehensive. So that has to be the will of council, first of all. And second of all, I think it's an issue that there have been projects that have been recommended by Gateway that have not been implemented by council. So there are certainly places in this community where we have found, bottlenecks, weaknesses, overflows.
So is that stuff you can bring back to council?
Sure, the
That you can go
reports
through your
exist.
records?
Sure.
So I just want to,
Once again, though, it may or may not have an impact on an individual street like Starrett, but it looks at the weak points, the weakest weak points, and recommends fixing those and building up into the bigger part of the system.
so we're going to, council, I'm just going to take a moment. This is one of my passion projects and why I'm here. I think you've done a nice job explaining how the system works as a system. We obviously have a lot to contend with. The storm events that we've seen, especially the storm that happened last month, was, categorically, as the executive said, of this county said, it was an act of God, and we understand that. We understand also that we need to make our community more resilient. So at minute, 37 here, okay, you can write that down. I'm committing to you that we're going to make your community more resilient to these issues. This council and Gateway are on the same page on this. And Rick and I have been talking about this. I went to his office with Mr. Kazarowski to discuss some of these issues. We understand there's going to have to be some system improvements, all right? And it's all about looking at the importance and urgency, which you guys have been doing. And as funds have been available, we've captured some of those funds, and some of those funds we haven't in regards to like grant funds. Alcazan has funding available, and we ourselves are providing funding. In order of, between the road program and the sewer program, we're taking in over $1.some million a year. So it's about a capital improvement plan to address the system. We need to build the support at the community level, because to the residents' point, seeing that these issues are afflicting other residents, just as they have afflicted my own family, is important, because it further motivates myself to work with council to get something on the books, to finish the projects that we started, and to look at separation, because we need to create more capacity in the system. We looked at Crafton Boulevard. Do we know where that water is coming from? We're learning that most likely that water enters our sewer system. So we're talking about a state route that also goes into the same pipe that your water has to go into. So we need to see what we can do to separate some of the flow. And this is not something that's foreign. It's happening in multiple committees, multiple communities. People may, in those communities, other communities, elect to put their head in the sand. But I believe we've got our heads out of the sand. All right, we understand that we have a changing climate where the east is going to become wetter, and we can't just ignore it. It's not to say that we're going to prevent flooding, all right, but we can work to mitigate it and make the community more resilient. And the upstream effect, if we can, I don't know if you wanted to explain the head pressure issues. I mean, there's some of those technical matters, but I think you eloquently and succinctly put that finishing the Clearview project creates more capacity for everybody at that tier and takes water out lower in the system as well. So we have a project that we submitted for Fountain that'll also take water out. So this is a multi-pronged project that's going to take multiple years and multiple years of political will. And whoever sits in these seats moving forward needs to understand they need to make the investments. I believe this council is going to make steps to commit for future councils to maintain those investments. I am hoping that this council can commit to a capital improvement plan that gets us ahead in many regards and use engineering solutions that are available to us today. As he said, some of the issues that happen up on Sterrett actually go back to when the properties were platted 100 years ago or 70 years ago. If you notice that Poplar and Sterrett meet, there's the city of Pittsburgh right there. That was not developed. Where you see the Poplar apartments, that was not developed. There was a farm there. There's an old farmhouse and a spring house, and you can see where all the sewer lines point into the borough of Crafton because there is nowhere for them to go. There was no system going into the city of Pittsburgh. That was the extent of the development. So you actually have lateral lines, and the engineer showed that they're actually laterals going across neighbors. Is that best practice today? No, you don't really want to have your lateral all underneath your neighbor's deck, underneath their retaining wall. That's what you actually have up there on Sterrett. And laterals crossing neighbors' backyards. Is that how we would expect to design it today? Today you would expect to have some type of easement right away for those. But again, we're dealing with a development that's been here for 100 years, 75 years, and now we have to figure out, well, what can we do? Separation is probably the most economic of those options. I mean, if you separate the sewers and the stormwater, you're going to create more capacity in the sewer side. And hopefully you want to have an instance where you're going to have sewage backing up. At the minimum, you would have, or maybe a worst case scenario, let me put it that way, you'd have fresh rainwater, to deal with. And in my family's instance, we actually had, we were fortunate that we actually only had to deal with the stormwater running down Alley A that cascaded into our basement and contributed, to 3 to 6 inches of flooding in our own basement. But we were very fortunate that we didn't have the sewage backup. There's numerous properties in this community that had sewage issues or stormwater issues, as we heard from residents that came to provide their comment. So I just really hope that this has been an eye-opening experience for every member of council. It's been an eye-opening experience for the engineer. I think Alberto Harquin, the engineer that sat in your seat a couple meetings ago, understood, quickly came to understand that it was a very heated meeting when people were very, very upset because they had been affected, emotionally, financially by the outcomes of that storm. But I think you did a really nice job clarifying on the record what the system, what occurred that night with the system, and how these council needs to continue making improvements to make the system more resilient, to try to overcome these. It's not to say that we're never going to have, a backup or a flooding situation, but at least it will help.
I'll just add too that just to try to begin to let you understand the complexity of the problem. Even on Sterrett, there are 91, 93, and 95. They all flow to a common lateral. So they share a lateral, which then ties into the public sewer. If there's a problem on that common lateral, then those sewers would back up as well. So once again, we don't, since we're not responsible for it, we don't televise it, we don't maintain it, and I don't think anybody does. Most people don't even know when they're on a common lateral, which means they share the same lateral pipe with 2 or 3 or more homes. So most of the times they think they tie directly into the public sewer. Those houses don't. So once again, just more complexity. One other thing, that pipe actually ties in at the 3 o'clock position on the pipe. So it ties in halfway down the pipe. So if the pipe, as soon as the pipe gets half full, it's already flowing back into the lateral. So it's lateral positioning that also has an impact. If the lateral comes in at the 12 o'clock position, the pipe has to be completely full, and even get pressurized for the water to start to back upwards into the lateral. So there's so many complexities associated with understanding flooding and systems, and these are things that people don't think about, and they are unique, and there's things that we wouldn't think about as engineers that occur.
So basically what you're saying, we've gone through all of this about systems, and I was gonna ask, and I wanna go back to the idea of looking at our whole system. And I think that's a discussion this council has to take. I understand to model even a square mile is probably a very expensive process. But, I think that may be really an important thing that we need to talk about. But, okay, so basically you just said that the people who came here, there's 3 properties, 2 residents that are right here, they share a single lateral and it's not positioned correctly. So, yes, we know that laterals are not our responsibility, but why have we had that discussion?
We just discovered it as a result of this investigation.
Okay, so we have yet to have that discussion with the
Right.
individuals who share a lateral. So I'm assuming that your recommendation would be to redo those laterals so each one has their own and they come in at the top.
That's where we don't own the
I
land.
understand we don't own them, but don't we have the obligation to give these people that information and let them know that they have an opportunity? Yes, it's an expensive opportunity, but I would appreciate that information if I was in that position. And then it would be my decision about what happens there.
Well, of course, that's why I'm disclosing that as a specific example, that, and it's an attempt to understand or show the complexity of the problem, but also to inform residents of their situation. And there are discussions that the municipality can have about shared laterals. So, I'm just trying to show that every time you think you have it figured out, there's going to be something that you didn't know about, you didn't anticipate.
Right.
It's a
Okay,
really complex process.
Right,
So-
but in this case, it sounds like once you've done some due diligence, looked at the maps and
I've
whatever.
got some information.
You got
sure.
some information
Yeah.
that we didn't have
Right.
that's useful to these people.
Yes.
Right, however, in this instance, regardless that they had their lateral line positioning, that event,
It might not have been 36 inches, so.
that there's different ways of looking at that. You can't posit one way or another other than to know that it wasn't just a isolated event. Everybody in the municipality was being afflicted by it, and not only in this municipality, adjoining municipalities. So with that, we have to understand that we have to have a balanced approach. As much as we would like to fix everybody's laterals, there's some things that we don't do.
I'm not asking for
Well,
everybody's laterals.
Please let me finish what I'm saying. There's things that we're not regulating that need to be regulated. All the municipalities regulate laterals. They require inspections at sale. We don't do that. That's a conversation that we need to take
I would agree with that.
because.
These people probably would have liked to have that information.
Exactly.
before they
Well,
bought that property.
you're talking about private property
I've
issues.
offered that. I have a whole program on voluntary, you didn't have to make it mandatory, you make a voluntary lateral testing program which educates the new homeowners on what this means and why they should care, not just about if there are cracks in the lateral, but sump pumps, basement drains, all those sort of issues. So once again, sorry to interrupt.
It's all right.
That has been something that's been brought up and met with, no thanks.
Yeah, so.
No thanks here,
Yes.
at this table?
Through the management, through our line of communication.
So these are things that we.
Prior
we need-
management.
Right, so these are things that we need to move forward on and for you to educate this council on and the community on. Because some folks may say, well, I've never had a problem in Crafton and I don't want to spend the money on improving my system. I shouldn't be regulated on my impervious cover. These are the things that are gonna come down the road very quickly with Act 167. All right, so the dialogue's been started, everybody's getting a level of education here. And again, we need to take a measured approach. So in your professional opinion, let's say the backwater valves, is that a sound solution for those property owners? Is that something, because the way you explained it at our meeting, essentially, they could flood themselves out.
If installed incorrectly. So placed in the correct location, that is your best bet to protect your home and your least cost. There are other ways. You can install grinder pumps, which actually put pressure, you pressurize like your water line, you pressurize your sewer out of your house. That's a more expensive option. But a backwater valve put in the right spot is 10 times less the cost of a grinder pump. So definitely a cost-effective way to protect your home.
The addresses that you mentioned here, 93.
1, 3, and 5.
Are those your houses? They're across the street?
Yeah.
They're the apartments, probably?
No, they're probably the three directly across.
They look single homes.
Yeah.
Three houses on Tunnel Level. In 95 was the lady who said she had a chronic problem.
This is, yeah.
I've been there since 2014, never had a call
Mrs.
for that. Or none, I never got a call for it back. 92 and 96, I think that's when one comes in at 3 o'clock. It's either 92 or 96.
Yeah, I think also the lateral, the multiple house lateral comes in at 3 as well.
95 actually is the highest point
Yeah.
on that line, so
Yeah.
95 backed up, 91 and 93 should have been backed up.
Unless the
before.
backup is above 91 and 93, so it would be in the lateral
in the
before
lateral
it gets to
itself,
those, so
right.
it backs up into the
I
lateral.
mean, 95's here, 91's here, 93, 95 backed up, 91 and 93 should have took the brunt of the water before 95, because they're lower, she's higher.
Unless the backup was higher.
No, she said the house next door to her had water.
But I'm saying that she would have been the last person to get water, that being the highest level, so.
Another recommendation we've made is data collection. One of the best ways is to set up a complaint database. So every time there's a complaint, there's a system that the person that takes the call asks a series of questions, enters it into a database, and after a while, you've got a great GIS database where someone says, where's all the complaints from this particular storm event? It can light up. Where's all the complaints in the last 5 years? We can see concentrations of complaints. Like that type of data, once again, that was mentioned years ago and met with no thank you. So once again, it's there are lots of ideas, lots of things that can be proposed. I'd love to have workshops if you're interested in hearing some of the things that are out there for you and for me to hear what your concerns are. You know, I hope that you don't see me as the bad guy. I'm only trying to present facts and process and standard engineering practices. I don't want to tell you what to do. I would love to help these people. I'd love to help everybody. It's not that expensive, but it's not my decision. I can't say in a letter, I think you ought to spend your money and help these 2 people. Like that's not a professional opinion. So I give you the facts and I tell you what is generally accepted, and then you can say thanks, but we're going to do this. So
All right, so
it's not
let me
you
get back
have
to
listen.
my original question here. The 3 laterals go into,
Okay.
would they require 3 different backflow valves or 1?
Well, it's best to have one in each house, because if it's a common lateral, like Mr. Kazarowski was saying, if it backs up, if you have one backwater valve and it's, let's say, in a spot that doesn't protect the lowest house, then the lowest house could flood and the upper one couldn't. If you put it too far down, you know, right before it goes into the main line, then and it's holding the sewage, so no water comes out of the lateral. So 3 houses are generating sewage, plus their roof leaders, plus their basement drains, and it's all coming down the lateral, but it's not getting out because the lateral is closed. So, yeah, it's gonna back up into this home. So it's best to put it normally in the basement. That's usually the best place. If you get it close to your basement drain, then you know nothing else is tapped into it. You want all your pipes tapped below where your backwater valve is, right? That makes sense, because you want that water to go out and not be held by the backwater valve. A good plumber will know this and make sure that he installs it at the location that would protect it. So to answer your question, you would need 3 backwater valves in each of those homes.
Okay, and then that where it goes into our system, is it a big deal to change that 3 o'clock to 12 o'clock?
Well, think about it. If you think about the pipe position of where that 3 o'clock is, the sewer has to gravity flow, so it slopes downward, right? So what they did was, based on where the houses are and based on where the sanitary line is, they're almost at the same elevation, so they can just barely inch that sewer down as flat as they can without going under the sewer line, right?
Okay,
So
right.
it has to flow downhill. So that's as good as, and I make that assumption because who's going to put it at 3 o'clock when you can put it at 12, right? So probably and most likely that's as low, that's as high as they can go in the pipe. So it's not an easy fix. You have to replace all the lateral, all the way to the homes, possibly lower the main sewer line, but if you lower that line, you have to lower the one below it, and the one below it, right? So it becomes a massive domino effect. So the short answer is probably not. Probably not.
Okay, then one other question. We had complaints, of course, Starrett Street, and we had complaints and we had complaints on Maxwell Street and Glen Street about, and you mentioned some other places. Do you know off the top of your head where you said those squeeze points are, those weak
that
points?
report was 2013.
Okay.
I just can't remember.
We're interested in knowing where they are.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Well,
Okay.
there's a report, it's called the feasibility study report, it's 2013, you have it in your file, or I'll get it to you if you want, but it
Okay.
shows capital improvement projects, basically upsizing pipes
Yeah.
to get that.
I'd like to know
out
where
faster.
those other places are.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Were these reports given to council or just the manager?
No, everything would go through the manager who would disseminate the information. So, but this was a requirement as part of your consent order. So it was, you were obligated to do this study as part of the consent order. So I would think the council would have had access to it, but most councils don't really care about engineering reports.
So,
Get rid of
one
that.
other thing, since the review project was brought up and the merits of it, did we not receive a substantial amount of funding from the PADEP?
Over $1 million,
And their expectation was that we were gonna finish it.
of course. Of course, they're not the agency that will come and take your money back, but they'll remember.
Yes. So it's in our best interest to finish the project, to make it whole. And actually, the way we sat down and designed the last phase, we actually improved it upon the initial grant application.
Yes, we're able to hold back a little more.
So we took the opportunity with what we know today to enhance that last phase. And that last phase is equal to 1/3 the total length of the entire project. Is that correct?
For the entire Clearview project, yes, it's a
Right.
large part.
So it's a substantial amount of retention.
Yes, it is,
And-
compared to the entire project, yes.
Right. And to move forward, as we talk about bottlenecks and how to take that out of the system, all right? Essentially, we've been building an underground retention pond, okay? And the next goal is to actually try to figure out how we can discharge that fresh water and keep it from going to Alcosan, which is ultimately what Alcosan wants, is that correct?
Ultimately, you want to remove, because what happens with Clearview is that the water ends up back in the combined system. So all that water that we're collecting is separate storm water, but it doesn't pipe to a stream. So when you separate it, then the storm water goes to the stream, and it doesn't go to the Alcosan treatment plant, it doesn't go to their conveyance, it doesn't go through your conveyance system. So it doesn't have any backup problems associated with it. But in this case, 10 years ago or so, I can't remember how long, we estimated it $1 million to run a pipe from, at the basic Clearview, I'm drawing a blank on the names now, Crafton Boulevard, and before you get to the bridge, you turn left down one of the streets, and there's a stream at the base of that street.
Baldwin.
You're right, Paul, that's it. It would take $1 million to get it there. So at the time it was decided, we're not gonna spend $1 million, we're gonna put it back into the combined system, but at a slower rate. So it used to all go hit at one time. Now, a big 60-inch pipe, which is holding the water, lets a little 8-inch pipe, or a 6-inch pipe, discharge the water slowly. So it does go back in, but it's retained, and what the idea is to let the storm pass, and so hold back the water to save the capacity in the system. Then when it stops raining and the pipes open back up, then that tank drains freely back into the system.
And that's at this end of Clearview?
Yes.
The lower end of Clearview?
That's right. And there's another tank that's
Just
going
below
in.
Sterrett Street,
Yes,
right?
and there's another one coming in right at the upper end. As part of the new project will be
Yeah,
another
put
tank.
the same thing up above at the
Yes.
other end.
So all that flow that used to flow out, off uncontrolled, down across Crafton, or,
The Clearview extension.
is it? No, down below into McMunn. Basically, it was ending up into McMunn
Across the
Street.
street. across
Right,
the
that's
boulevard,
getting now
before it
controlled
down.
and put into a tank and then held back.
And that's actually below Sterrett Street.
Yes. So all of that has some impact. And I'll say too that, I don't want to say that Crafton hasn't done any projects. They actually have done some removal projects in the past, but it was always based on what the sanitary sewer budget was and how much was available to be spent. So that was a very limited factor. So you could get a small project each year, and usually that was what was done just based on the amount of budget that was in the sanitary sewer fund. So that's why a lot of that was limited. And I'll say too, the rain garden along Crafton Park, that is stormwater control. That goes back to keeping the flow from getting in. Remember I said you either limit the flow getting in or you get the flow out faster. What happens in a rain garden is that the water comes in and then it infiltrates into the subsurface. Once again, it's got that small orifice. So you got this big pond with a small outlet or a drain on it, so it only drains a small amount of water. But while the rest of the water is sitting in the pond, it infiltrates, it's absorbed by the plants, it evaporates, so it's not a standing pond. It will drain eventually. Once again, eventually that 6-inch pipe is going to drain that, or that 4-inch pipe is going to drain that pond, but it'll take so long, the storm will be over and there'll be room in the system. But while it's draining, it's designed to infiltrate and take water out. Clearview's not taking water out, it's holding it back.
Right.
A rain garden takes it out and holds it back.
Right.
So there's lots of technology. So even the Fountain Chartier sewer, that's 100% removal. That's a separation project. We found a location where by making a simple diversion of flow from one pipe into another, we've been able to show that we could remove hundreds of thousands of gallons of water from that section of the system. So they're in order to find those, you have to study the system as a whole. We stumble on stuff sometimes, as a result of looking at other things, but.
So let's say, to interrupt, let's say down the road here, if we're able to put together a capital improvement program, and we have, let's say the Clearview project will be a complete project, and then you're able to separate it, you're completely pulling it out. People may say, well, why would you even have to finish it if you're just gonna separate it anyways? The whole point for the Clearview project and multiple other projects that we're probably gonna have to carry out is to create this retention process. And the retention process is to cut down peak flow. Because even if we are separating that water that used to go to Alcoasand, we don't want to discharge it at such a rate that creates downstream flooding, which you saw in Bridgeville's situation. There's been lots of development upstream of Bridgeville. Those developments have went in over the past 20 to 40 years and created a runoff situation that has created flooding in communities that used to not have flooding during some rain events. So there is a man-made component to it, and that's why through Act 167 the county's moving forward on. And that's been how many years has Allegheny County been studying this? 10 plus years. So I feel as if there's a lot of political willpower at this point to move forward here best practices that you want to bring to the table and help us make equitable decisions that are, will be economic. But there's going to have to be a political reality that you're just not going to be able to do these things within cash flow. And I'll go back to the understanding that we don't run a household budget. We're making multi-year investments, just like everybody in this audience has taken out a loan on their property, 15, 30-year mortgage. We need to invest in the same way. We have to make long-term investments, and we're not going to be able to make those long-term investments just in a fiscal year's capital or fiscal year's cash flow budget. It's just not feasible, and very few businesses, the federal government, the state government do business that way. So we really need to work with the engineer, work with our management team to figure out what the most feasible approach will be to do some of this with financing.
So that said, I agree with that, and if I go back to some of the things that Rick said about various plans and ideas and programs that have been brought in the past, I'm looking through the files that we have access to, and I'm not seeing record of any of those. So I'm wondering if we can get Gateway to kind of look back in their records and put a package together. We talk about workshops. We need to be educated. The council, the community that's interested, to begin to piece this together, to figure out what we should be doing, look at recommendations that have been made in the past. And then, as you mentioned, the voluntary lateral program. I have to tell you, I knew nothing about that until I got on council and started going to workshops, And so we're at my house, we're getting ready to do a big hardscape. The first thing I did was to have my lateral scope, because my house is 80 years old. I said, I don't want to put in all this hardscape and then have to dig it up 5 years from now. I wouldn't have known that if I wasn't on council.
Well, I'll tell you, one thing is some communities have engineering committees, so it'd be a subcommittee, not a public works, it's a little different, but an engineering committee that we could meet on a regular basis, call them workshops. But then, folks that are interested in the actual engineering side of things, that want to hear about those specifics, that care, that want to read the reports, right, like that would be, I know it can't be more to create a, quorum, but certainly you can set up a committee and that really works. Like I said, it is different than public works.
And if it's an
focused
open
on that.
meeting, we can have as many of our council members attend.
Okay, yeah.
And residents.
And residents, absolutely, open meeting.
So I really appreciate the time that everybody's taken to talk about this, and hopefully the members of the audience.
I just want to take one more minute to make a point.
Okay.
If we look at that picture up there, Crafton Borough, and we say that's Clearview Avenue, and we say that where Rob is sitting is the west side of Clearview Avenue, where the Clearview extension is, which is down from Sterrett Street, right? That's phase 1 and phase 2, right above Rob's head, where a tank has been put in to alleviate some of the downflow with a little pipe on the other end. Is that right?
Yep.
And that's on this end of Clearview. And the other end of Clearview is where the project that you want to go forward with is over there.
Yes.
Did this tank help the people at Sterrett Street? Or was it supposed to? Or, this tank is right below Sterrett Street.
It does two things. The original intent was to control stormwater from Clearview, to come up with green technologies to control and detain stormwater. That was the objective that the Growing Greener grant had given us. So that was accomplished. When you do that, those elements, what you're doing is freeing pipe up capacity. So how that affects Sterrett is, at some point, the water from Clearview that pipe intersects with the water from Sterrett. So they're going to compete for space.
Yeah, and come down to this overflow, or this tank.
Right, but it doesn't come to the tank. The tank comes out and Sterrett comes out, and they come to a Y somewhere. If you cut off the point where the Clearview and no flow would come out, Sterrett wouldn't have to compete for that flow, that capacity in that pipe downstream.
So let's say the pipe is down on the extension or it's on what I think just so I can clarify. So because the laterals are backed up and the pipe is backed up on Sterrett, but on Clearview, there's a giant tank holding everything back to a drip. Essentially, it's like the point. You're taking a river out of the point, essentially.
Right,
One
so
of those
other
rivers
river can
flows
flow
right into
better.
the Ohio.
That's the intent, that's what's happening with Sterrett. It's not fighting now. So when it fights, what it does is it backs up. So it's waiting in line, so the line gets bigger and the flow goes up the pipe. And it keeps going up the pipe until it finds a point to come out.
So that up the pipe can either happen in theory.
In a home, on a manhole, it can happen anywhere along the line,
Point of least resistance, correct?
right?
Would it still happen? So in Clearview's case, because there's been some remediation then, it would be more likely to go up the line onto Sterrett and go up there than it would be to go back into a retention pond.
Clearview will still have its issue because at some point that tank won't hold all the water. There's an overflow built in that will go out into a channel and back into the same pipe. So at some point, Clearview could back up as well. Once those tanks back up, Clearview could back up.
That's why the ultimate solution would be to figure out how we can maximize the investment that we have there and separate it all, because you're creating, it's a bell curve. We're taking the top of the curve off, right? We're holding it back. Because if we were to just discharge that water into the stream, you'd wash out the stream bed and wash out people downstream. So that's why, in theory, the tank perspective, there's a lot of merit to it. But we're doing it in phases, and taking that phase approach allows for more time to take hold and more events to intercede. And so what we need to figure out is, finishing the project as designed, all right, and then separating, all right? That's the ultimate thing that we have to do, all right? Because then you're gonna not have to rip up all of Sterrett, all of Bar, because that's the overall goal. And down the road, you'd be able to, if council so chose, you could redo Sterrett and Bar as well. But maximum bang for the buck is to go for a separation, because we also have to understand, you've got Route 60, or you got 40 acres, including roughly 40 acres, including Route 60 and above, right? So you've got that long stretch of road.
Oh, for Clearview.
Clearview, but also Route 60.
Okay.
Because you've got those catch basins that, from what I understand, tie in to the sewer system below. The laterals, or the catch basins actually tie into our municipal system. There's not a separate state system for Route 60, or old, as people that have been here for quite a while, call it Ridge Road. So the biggest bang for the buck, in my opinion, is the next phase should be to do what you suggested 10, 15 years ago, is to initiate a separation down on Crafton Boulevard.
As well as other opportunities, right? You want choices to see
Right.
where you're best,
Right.
what we call it is cost per gallon removed.
Right.
What's it cost? Is it a penny a gallon removed or a dollar a gallon removed? Nobody wants $1 a gallon removed, they want the penny per gallon removed. So that we would quantify all the projects by that. What's the cost per gallon to remove that flow?
Well, and then the risk as well. I mean, because you could have penny a gallon flow that doesn't matter because it's not causing a problem. I mean, so it's a little more complicated as an equation.
Well,
Yes.
this instance though, the penny a gallon, and I understand where you're going with that,
That's fair.
the penny a gallon, depending on what time interval that you're also talking about. So I understand that's the point you're making, but the engineer's point is the lowest dollar value or economic value to actually take it out of the system is still a good proposition, because you're freeing up those gallons in the overall Alcosan system. And that's part of the issue, where do we really want our children fishing and kayaking down Chartiers Creek where there's confined sewer overflows. And what we want to do is come to the point where those are few and far between, and or never. And I mean, that's the overall gist of the EPA consent order and DP's consent order with us. So again, this is healthy debate.
I'm just not convinced that Project 1 and Project 2 helped, because we had a problem on Sterrett Street, and you've already got that system in there.
And we're not doing anything
And
today.
the other end of Clearview, you're saying, I can't buy that phase 1 and phase 2 has helped, that's
All right.
all. We can move on to,
I still have 2 more items on
Okay.
our meeting board.
God.
These are less painful. First of all, so the last 2 general items, there have been some invoicing questions recently. So I just want to go through that briefly. We've been submitting invoicing in a format as requested by the prior manager. It's our understanding that the interim manager would like to see things different, maybe even council would like to see things presented differently. So we've talked about some options on how to do that, provide more detail to the invoices so that you understand the work that's being done for the dollar that you're spending. In addition, we've met with the manager, the interim manager, to review the invoices in question to date. There are some current ones that are still in the old format that don't have enough detail, so that we've met with the manager and gone through those invoices and brought to the meeting what the work was. Manager seems satisfied. So what we're going to do now, here on, the next set of invoices will provide what we believe, and the direction we've got from the interim manager is the sufficient detail that you can understand what is being done for the amount of dollar that you're spending. So I want it to be understood that I don't believe there's problems with the issue, problems with the invoices or issues with the invoices. It just was simply how they were presented and how one particular entity preferred it versus another. So we're quickly changing that to exactly how you want to see those invoices. I do not believe there will be any issues further. If you don't like it, we'll take it to a new level of explanation and detail. So I just want that to be clear. And last thing, I've been hearing some issues about Crafton mapping. Just want to talk about that a little bit. The mapping that you have is fully complete. It represents your infrastructure. It doesn't represent private sewers, like from Crafton Ingram Shopping Center. It doesn't represent PennDOT or Port Authority sewers that might connect. That's never been the directive. The directive was to understand your system so that you can operate it and maintain it. Right, the consent order for the past, since 2004, you've been obligated to operate and maintain your infrastructure. So I don't want it to be confused that because your mapping doesn't represent other entities, whether they're up or downstream communities or PennDOT or other entities, that the mapping is incomplete. Your infrastructure mapping, I assure you, is complete. We're going to meet again this week, hopefully, with the interim manager, and any issues where, hey, where's the mapping for this street or that street? We'll sit down, we'll pull it up, we'll show you. But if the new directive, and it seems like it might be, because as you begin to study your system as a whole, you need to look at who's coming in and where you're discharging to. That's a different directive. That's a different, bigger picture plan. So those elements of systems outside of your infrastructure should be added. So I just wanted to make that point. Nothing's perfect, but I really believe that all of your infrastructure is represented. So we'll talk about that at our next meeting with the interim manager. So that's all I have.
Thank you. I'd like to move on to the solicitor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. 2 quick issues. First, council held an executive session prior to the meeting tonight to discuss personnel and real estate matters. And secondly, council should keep your eye on their email because I will be sending along the fire code inspection memo later this week. That's the end of my report.
Thank you. Moving forth to the business agenda. As an engineer discussed Crafton Borough was awarded $700,051 through PennDOT's Green Light Go grant to modernize 4 traffic lights within Crafton Borough. So thank you, Gateway Engineers, and thank you, Council, for the support to Go Big or Go Home. I think this will be a great investment in our community. Our signals have aged, and it's time to reinvest in them. Thank you to PennDOT for affording us this once-in-a-generation opportunity. Moving forward with a motion to award the bid to Deller Professional in the amount of $10,500 for the demolition of 1508 Bar Avenue as recommended by the engineer.
Seconded.
So moved. Second.
All right, got that clear for the record? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All that opposed? Motion carries, thank you. Administration, a motion to accept the proposal from AMCOM Office Systems as recommended by the interim borough manager.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Rob, could you discuss, please?
Yeah, we went out and actually had a few vendors come in. AMCOM was the best. We discussed it internally, the options and the overall system that they offered. The one group came in that we waited for Coletta. He offered us, actually asked them to proposal to purchase 2 printers. There was nothing else more with it. It was pretty cut and dry.
So I saw that they were in there.
Yeah.
So since this is your recommendation,
I appreciate it. It is that recommendation from me and staff to move forward with the AMCOM.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All that opposed? Motion carries. Before we move on to the next motion on the agenda, I'd like to introduce a motion to amend Resolution 2017-19 to add an assistant code enforcement officer at a rate of $15 an hour to update the borough treasurer's salary to reflect the rate currently being paid by the borough, which is about $3,000.
so moved.
Seconded. Any discussion?
So there are 2 parts in there?
Yeah, with as we looked at the 2017-19 resolution, we noticed that it didn't reflect the actual pay that the treasurer was being provided. And from what I understand from staff, that was an oversight of the previous manager. All right. And subsequently, an oversight of the previous council. So we're rectifying this. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh, sorry, yeah, public comment.
Right, but the second issue, Mr. Kraus asked, what were the 2 issues? And the second issue was we're adding a $15 an hour rate for an assistant code enforcement officer. There is a motion later on the agenda. And then we also have to do public comment
Right.
because this was added to the agenda.
Right, public comment. So would anybody like to comment on the proposed motion? Yep.
Yeah, you're sitting there saying assistant, who is the full-time then?
The current full-time officer is Mr. Kazarowski.
And how's he gonna have, is he gonna assist himself, is that what you're telling me?
No, there's
I was thinking that the one we're calling an assistant.
there's a, yeah, well, if you could
You
come
understand what I'm
forward.
saying?
Yeah, if you could come forward.
Is he code enforcer or is he an assistant code enforcer?
No, this is not, they're not one and the same, there's 2 positions.
Okay,
Yeah, so you could just say your name for the record.
I'm trying to say 14 year Avenue.
Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out what you guys are doing here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You look at the motion, there's a motion right underneath it to hire. an
Yeah,
assistant.
there's a motion to,
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, there's gonna be,
he's the primary, and we're hiring an assistant.
Assistant.
right.
Like, because I see his name was assistant.
That's not me.
Okay.
It's Kazarowski, she's Polish, well, I'm Polish, but that's fine.
Okay. Alrighty. So any other additional citizen comment? Alright. May move forward with approval? A vote for approval?
Aye.
Aye, okay,
Aye.
thanks.
Aye.
All that opposed?
No.
Okay, thank you. Could you, would you like to take a roll call vote?
Sure. Mr. Amendola,
Yes.
Mr. Kraus,
Yes.
Ms. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Glasser, Ms. Stamets,
Yes, no.
Mr. Rosario,
Yes.
Mr. Lavasser.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Thank you. All right, thank you. A motion to hire Chizanowski as Assistant Code Enforcement Officer.
So moved.
Seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All that oppose? Motion carries.
Nope, right.
Oh, sorry. Did you have a comment?
She just said no.
No.
No. All right. For the record, should we note the no vote? Thank you. Moving forward with the Civil Service Commission, motion to authorize to advertise for the vacancy in the Civil Service Commission, 6-year term. Applications will be accepted until September 1st, 2018.
So moved.
Seconded. Any discussion?
This opening is being created,
Centered because Ms. AJ Pasurik is retiring from the commission. She's now looking to renew for a term. So I actually would like to take a moment to thank Ms. Pasurik for her years of dedication to Crafton Borough. She's been a very valuable member of many committees in this community, and it's the type of volunteerism that we really cannot afford to lose, and so we're sad to see her step down, but we understand her choice. And with that being said, we hope that there's somebody in this community that will step up to fill her shoes. So, thank you. I may have a motion, may I move to,
We're at the vote.
yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I'm trying to pass
Are there any opposed? Motion
Thanks.
carries. Sure.
And, yeah, I need order, trying to pass out. Discussion items, vacant properties along Crafton Boulevard.
Well, I asked the code enforcement officer to complete the list. What he did was he filled out the inspector code list with the reason the houses should be demoed. That should be included in the packet. He also, I just want to take note that there's one property that we had an interested party as part of the side yard program. I think that paperwork is in progress with the county.
What's the address?
Remember, yeah, what the address was on that Crafton Boulevard one?
I think it was
16.
1656.
56, 54, and 52.
First one, 1656.
I believe that's the one that was done for
The
the.
paperwork's already started on that. She's moving forward with hopefully side yard program for that property.
Did you say though that the report was prepared for all 3 of these properties, or?
He prepared a report, and what he did was actually listed the reasons why it was recommended for condemnation.
For all 3?
All 3.
Just
Through our
one.
packets.
Just condemnation, demolition.
Demolition.
Oh, for all 3.
I think stand correct, demolition.
All right, is there any further discussion?
Mr. Kazarowski, can you send that report to my attention so I have it on my phone? Thank you. That's
All right. With that, we'll move on to the community announcements. Mr. Kazarowski, could you move forward and
Sure.
give the announcements, please?
Savvy Citizens been up and running. It's a downloadable application. You can use your smartphone, your tablet, or any other device connected to the application store. I know our staff constantly updates it, put in information on the community regarding everything that's happening, poll openings, closures, and different events that take place in the community and the surrounding areas. Concerts in the Parks have started Thursday, July 26th at 7:30. Jupiter Vinyl, indie pop, folk music will be on the agenda. Crafton Public Library, Thursday, July 26th at 6 o'clock out at the Crafton Community Center. We have Crafton's Got Talent. It's a special event for talented kids. It's open to children ages 17 and under. We ask that you register at the Crafton Public Library for the event. Crafton Ingram Rotary reminds you that the Ribbon Chicken Fest will be Thursday, August 2nd, 2018, Crafton Park. Tickets are available. Crafton Community Farm, open gardening night, Sundays 9:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., Tuesdays 7 p.m. to 8 p.m., Thursdays 5 p.m. to dark. More information, craftoncommunitygarden@gmail.com for anybody that's interested in looking up. School District Tax Collection. It is Tuesday, August 28, 2018, 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and Friday, August 31st, 2018, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. here at the Crafton Community Center. 2018 Side Yard and Blighted Structure Program. Accepting applications through August 31st, 2018. More information at the website at www.crafton.org.
Thank you, Mr. Gazarovski. Moving forward to additional citizen comments for those items that were not on the agenda. Go back to the signing sheet. Oh, there it is. Edward R. Hello?
Alo.
Yeah, Alo?
Yes. Hi, members of the council. My name is Edward Alo. I am one of the owners of 568 Broadhead Avenue. There are two issues about Broadhead Avenue I wanted to bring to the council's attention. First, primarily, as the council may or may not be aware, People's Gas were replacing some of the gas lines on Broadhead and up and down Park. Well, my property is basically directly across the street from Park, at that corner of Park in Broadhead. This construction began, I believe it was the week of mine and my husband's wedding, actually. It started that Monday, we got married that Friday. We had no notice of that construction whatsoever until that Monday, whenever one of the individuals came onto the property as my husband was leaving for work and said, "Oh, we're going to be tearing up the edge of your driveway. It will be fixed in about a couple months." Well, come today, he's leaving for work again. Same person comes up and says, "Oh, well, we're going to be pouring the concrete today or tomorrow." Well, this is news to us. We would have liked a little bit of extra notice. We're just very upset that this just kind of gets sprung on us the week that it happens. I believe during the interim, we tried to place a few calls to the borough office to just give us a timeline of what to expect with this. I understand that you guys are busy. We hadn't received a phone call. We tried giving another phone call, I want to say last week, on behalf of myself, my husband, and also our neighbor who also has a portion of her driveway torn up. It's an inconvenience, especially knowing that we're going to be losing our driveway, or the ability to drive in and out of our driveway tomorrow, and possibly, definitely losing it to Wednesday, and who knows how much longer after that it will need time for curing.
Is that Miley's house? Did you buy that house from Miley, Mr. Miley?
It was an estate that we bought it from last year.
It's the driveway that goes way back in?
Yes.
I apologize, I did take that phone call, and I stopped down, talked to the project manager. Actually, last week, I did take 2 phone calls. I instructed them to make sure they give all the residents prior notification anytime they inconvenience you, especially with the driveway. Unfortunately, the gentleman that I was talking to at the time Like 30-year-old man that had a massive stroke. They had some problems and issues with the field manager with the Equitable Gas Company contractor, the subcontractor working for the gas company. I did go on that, I did tell him to please notify all the residents on Broadhead and Park Avenue anytime you're gonna inconvenience them, especially if it's given egress to a driveway. I apologize if they didn't do that. I'll stop by there again tomorrow. I'll talk to the new project manager and make sure they understand it again. I did take your phone calls. What I did was went down and talked to them as soon as I received them.
Oh, no, and we're not saying that you weren't doing it, it was just, we know you're busy and.
No, and I apologize for it, because they should have gave me the proper notification. Anytime they inconvenience you, especially with the driveway and so forth.
And we've only been coming up about a year owning this property in Crafton. We love being here. We got married at the district magistrate. We love the area. So we just wanted to know what exactly, how much we were supposed to get. Are we not getting the notice that we should? Or
You should. Actually, there was a little problem with the contractor not notifying you, and I'll address that.
Thank you.
I'll go down and see him.
And
So they're not able to get in their driveway at all?
We have to go in through currently now, we have to go in through the grass, and so
Yeah.
does our
Do
neighbor too. Because we reached out, we asked, like, we basically found out by them coming and doing the work. So we reached out to the borough to see, but basically they said, because it's the gas company can do what they want and not necessarily tell us when they're doing it.
No, no, that's
I had that
incorrect.
situation in my driveway for like
Yeah.
weeks.
They have to notify the property owners anytime there's any inconvenience like that. So that's incorrect, and I'm not sure.
Yeah, we got no notice up there on Crafton
So
Boulevard.
that's something that will be addressed, not part of the go out and
And
talk to them.
the solicitor noted that this isn't, it's frustrating for our residents, but with regards to the municipality, we can be an advocate. However, the PUC is your best advocate. So complaints like this need to be documented. We need to know about it. I would prefer that we know about it so we can tell them how it's affecting our residents. But ultimately, it would be very useful if you would file a complaint with the PUC if this is an ongoing issue. It's one thing if it happened once, but it sounds as if this has happened a number of times now.
couple.
Yeah, and we do have our issues in our own right-of-ways that we're trying to keep up with the contractor that's working for People's Gas. Manager Kazarowski's actively working with them to try to resolve that, because there's issues throughout the community where they're doing a lot of infrastructure upgrades. So I appreciate you coming out tonight to inform us, and Manager Kazarowski will continue to press People's Gas and their subcontractor to give them.
I had one more dealing with Broadhead. Being where I am on Broadhead, it's somewhat of a straightaway. We've noticed that I have two small little dogs, one like 4 months, 5 months old, and people fly down well in excess of the speed limit. I believe there were speed limit, I guess radar?
Monitoring devices.
Yes, on one end heading toward, on the telephone pole outside, heading towards Crafton Boulevard, and then I think one farther down the road, Crafton Boulevard heading towards Crafton Ave. I don't know if I would like to just bring this to council's attention to pass it on to the correct executive administrator who could help alleviate that, whether it be recommendation for speed bumps or more police patrol. I'd just like to bring
Yeah,
it
we
to
can
your
put the
attention.
speed monitor devices back up there. I got them in another location. We have two throughout the borough that we rotate to different locations, and we'll make sure we get them back on Broadhead if it's in both directions.
So in addition, we authorized you to be able to put up speed signs, 25 mile an hour speed signs, if you find that it requires that.
Isn't it 20 down there?
It is 20 on Broadhead.
It's
It's
20.
20.
Okay. So,
Do you need more signs down there, you think?
We could add signs, but believe me, if people
People
don't
fly
pay
that
attention
way.
to signs, the radar is probably, the monitoring device, which actually flashes and gives warnings, has more credence than a sign. Most people, I mean, even Crafton Boulevard, people are gonna speed if you have 100 signs up. I mean, we can put more up, but I think the monitoring devices are something that are more I guess, they get more proactive, you get more activity with that, slows people down automatically. So we'll rotate those and get them back on Broadhead.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Anthony Sala, if you could.
I'll keep this quick. My comment's more on Crafton Avenue in front of the church. Can't think of the name. Right where Broadhead and Belvedere meet. At St. Philip's. So there's cars that park whenever there's events at the church, whether it be Sunday services, be weddings, or whatever's going on. There's cars that park up and down that hill on both sides. I, moving into Crafton about a year ago, did not know that was illegal. That was legal. Had called the police. They said there's nothing we can do because essentially it's a borough's issue. It's the council that needs to discuss it. The only thing that we notice is, because there's a lot of people that intersection already at Broadhead and Belvedere is already pretty dangerous as it is. When there are cars parked, for instance, to the right, it's hard to see traffic. And I've been in numerous instances where we're coming off the 60, coming up from the plaza, and there's cars, as soon as you turn, there's a car right in front of you. The only thing that, I understand it's a church, they have events going on. If there's some kind of resolution that, the borough can work with the church, possibly have somebody there, kind of like what they do when school's in session. They have a crosswalk guard there, because there are a lot of people who do walk from the apartment complexes on Broadhead and utilize that intersection. And it does affect traffic where it does become somewhat dangerous, because when we're pulling out, there's essentially cars parked right there. And the only recourse is to essentially go to basically the opposite lane of traffic to get down to 60.
You're talking about the people that park for St. Philip's?
Yes.
I can confirm all of this. It is quite backed up at that intersection. So, it's a real catch-22 because, there's not enough parking for the church, and, they park along the side of the St. Philip's side there. And so you have everybody going around, 7 to 10 cars it could be on, so.
Maybe talk to the mayor and the chief, like Holy Trinity does, actually on 60 with a police officer as churchgoers.
It might have to be based on, maybe their event schedule, if they have something, like a holiday type event, because, every Sunday, it's not always that bad.
Sundays are usually not that bad. I'm talking like a Saturday midday where it's, prime shopping time when you're going down to Giant Eagle, going on the plaza. That was the time that I literally was coming back from the grocery store, and I sat at the light, and there was a car. I had the picture if council would like me to forward on, but I'm sitting there stopped because I couldn't get through because cars were essentially in the opposite lane of traffic, which makes it's dangerous.
Well, plus with pedestrians crossing that, the crosswalks aren't designated on one side of it, and there's not an access point on the St. Philip's side coming from Belvedere, so you get people walking across, and they park on the end of Belvedere as well, so you have people that get to the, they want to turn left, I'm turning left, he's turning left, we're both turning left, and we both have to go around the cars and miss 3 pedestrians.
Is it special events at the church, or is it Saturday evening mass?
I just think it's a regular type mass schedule, it depends on, if you hit a holiday.
It could even be weddings. I know I ran into one morning I was traveling to work, and they were doing work on some of the steps. They had all the contractors parked there. However, Crafton Police did stop by and say, hey, this is 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, you're during rush hour, can you unload and please move, because you're hitting a prime time when, especially the way the light's timed, is the fact that coming off 60, you can turn right at the same time they're turning left, but that doesn't always time correctly where it's essentially traffic to stop there.
Okay. I'll talk to the chief and the mayor.
Awesome, appreciate it.
Thank you. Seeing no additional citizen comments.
Don't talk to us.
Oh, yeah. You're not a citizen.
No, can't we talk?
You're not a citizen.
You get crickets.
You're
After, okay.
yeah. Say again? Yeah, so seeing no additional citizen comments, I'd like to move on with the intern update.
Okay. Hello. Just a couple updates. Pass this around to me, please. Thank you very much. Oh boy, we're getting near the end here. Hi, we're the interns. GIS, Light and Vacancy. We've hosted All 8 formal beat meetings as we promised. We got a lot of good information. We're focusing on writing the reports to you to tell you what we learned. You should have already gotten some information about what we've learned about code enforcement and recommendations towards what the new code enforcement officer should be doing or might consider to do. And also, we would like to follow up with them as well as the current code enforcement officer to talk about process. We met with the Civic Mapper from the beauty shop today, and they want to help us, with your permission, to build out the dashboard for GIS so that code enforcement officers can use it, that they don't need to, do any programming, anything like that. They're very much on board and would love to give you guys a huge discount to help build that out and also to continue on that legacy past our term. We spoke with Construction Junction, that's not on here, but we spoke with them about getting some deconstruction for some of the demolitions that you have pending. Trying to work together with Rob here to get a list of demolitions so that they can put it in their queue to check out the properties, ensure that they can be deconstructed safely. There's a few other pieces of paperwork that need to happen, but otherwise it sounds like a pretty easy process. I hope that you received those emails. At the end of our beat meetings, the Blight Enforcement Action Team public process meetings, it ended on a very high note. A lot of people attended near the end and were very excited, and then were disappointed that there was no more. So it sounds like they want to continue on this legacy. We still have their mailing lists and would like to coordinate with them to have one presentation near the end of our term to sort of tell you guys these are the tools we created during this time. We'd like to pass them on to you and ensure that you guys can have successful meetings thereon. The residents also suggested that future beat meetings sort of function like a committee, sort of also coordinate with code enforcement as well to hold some accountability, that they be resident-led, but they also involve at least one council member to observe and report back to council on what happens. So I hope you enjoyed that. We're still recruiting for the side yard program. That continues until the end of August. If anyone knows of any properties which are 3+ years tax delinquent or that are vacant, blighted, that they would like to adopt at a discount or possibly for free, let me know. I'll get you in touch with the right people in the county to make that happen. We're still in draft to create a comprehensive decision tree for code enforcement. Again, that's coordinating with code enforcement officers to make sure that we can address different kinds of residents and the different kinds of issues that they have. Whereas some residents might be able to afford to pay fines or to get their grass cut on time, other residents might not. We found a treasure trove of resources to help those residents to get their needs met and also to take off some of the financial and political burden off of the borough. Last but not least, there's a few recommendations. You've seen a few before already. The transit-oriented development meeting is tomorrow, 9:05, Castle Shannon. Please be there.
If you didn't email it back and you want to go tomorrow, just let me know so I can give them a quick heads up. 3:30 really right. And then there will be at least one other person from England will be there. So,
And I'll be attending partially.
cool. I so that'll be all day. And
Would you like to go? Could you go, please?
Okay. If there's any topics that
It starts at 9.
9 to 5, though they're going to be separated, I think, into like 2 3-hour sections, so you can only make half a day. And if there's any topic that Councilmember can't make it but would like to discuss, we can be your advocate to kind of bring those issues to the table. So let us know. So
Anything you want to talk about?
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
I don't know if council's aware of this, but I learned that Carnegie, our neighbor, has in their possession a grant for $15 million from, I guess it's 15 million dollars that they were awarded that, I think it was 2015 or 2016, to build a garage, and they were, I think it was EMAC money or air quality or some type of emissions controls to take the cars off the road. And essentially, this next round here with the Port Authority may afford us an opportunity to apply for the same type of grant funds, from what I understand.
I will say you might get a little pushback from the from the developer at least, or no, I'm sorry, the Dover Coal. Because Carnegie is considered an end point. They're kind of partial at the end of part of their public transit, while Crafton is kind of like a middle point. So they prefer more development here and then maybe kind of more cars at the other end. But they were open when they stopped by to say, how can we at least utilize the current space to optimize that area?
So Carnegie got $15 million.
Correct.
1.5 and then some zeros at the end.
For a garage that hasn't materialized.
Yeah, but still, it's a lot of money. So by
2020, I think they have plans to put that project in the ground, and they also have to move forward on, I think they have like a streetscape project. Yeah, there's a streetscape initiative that their council has to move forward. So it really behooves us to get in the game. We have to compete, because if we don't, our neighbors will. And just like we saw with the Green Light Go program, we have to throw our hat in the ring and put forth a initiative. So I appreciate you being the foundation of that initiative. Thank you.
Yeah, any other questions, residents? I have some questions for the solicitor.
I just have two quick things. We received emergency response data, kind of the hydrant data that was requested, and we got Duquesne Lights, so they came through. We got some information on streetlights. We'll be trying to map that to Duquesne. It's not as specific as we wanted, but for national security issues, they're not going to tell you where exact XYs are, but we got some information there, so thank you to those who helped. And then kind of fortuitous timing, today and this week we have been working on building out a citizen public complaint online.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
Then I list the system, all the addresses, the street.
So they provided, it's like north of Crafton Boulevard, or there's like, it's not an exact XY. It's some cross streets, but then they might be somewhere placed along that cross street, or they're gonna be like, it's toward Crafton Boulevard on the north side, and then they're not gonna be that exact.
Whole numbers though?
We do pull numbers and then the wattage, I believe, like the
There's some legwork there.
yeah, so we can use it, it's just not as specific as we and then we are starting, this week I did actually start to build out a public online citizen complaint portal, so citizens can go online, especially after the stormwater that was discussed by council, to say some way for citizens to go online and report issues. I did start looking into that. Today was the first day that I spent some time doing that. It should be relatively simple because there's no historical data to implement. So that'll at least allow going forward citizens to go online and submit a complaint with a geotag, so you can find a location for that. And then there's also a backend manager built out. Esri provides this as an option for local governments. So the borough staff can go in and manage those complaints if they can. So if there's any testers who want to be part of that.
I have some questions for the solicitor. Any progress on the last vacant registry ordinance?
Any progress on it?
Yeah, no, I'm just curious about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're still working on it. It's not ready for council to review, still waiting for some feedback as well. But yeah, it's on the horizon. My sense is that the group is committed to doing something along those lines, so.
Yep.
Cool. We're very excited.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing good work. All right. So with that, I'd like to move to adjournment. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time this evening.